spank my ass and call me Queen Elizabeth. It's time for another episode of A Tanker's View. So grab your tea fresh from the harbor and cream your scones. Let's start this show. Hi, I'm Zero. You may remember me from other times I've shit on things you've loved. Like this. Or that stereotype-laden introduction I did, thanks to my special guest director, Allie.
Hi.
Either way, I'm going to talk about the Challenger 3 main battle tank. Now, when I had started this series, I originally intended on crapping all over the worst sci-fi designs in, real history. Like this here, the Scorpion. I can still hate the Scorpion. Fight me about it. Now I find, like certain YouTubers, I need to broaden my horizons a little bit to retain the audience a little better. So I thought I'd broaden my horizons so wide the sun will never set on them. Now, the Challenger 3 takes its name all the way back from the original Challenger lines, the fourth in its name, undefeated in battle, and unfortunately woefully dated like all of its contemporary counterparts currently. So, now the Russians recently dropped the T-14 on us back in 2015 and gave us some specs for it. Now, like a lot of Russian propaganda, I'm going to assume that specifications are complete and utter bullshit, as we've seen how well they performed, and tests from Syria seem to indicate that 4 went out, 2 were disabled, 1 was outright destroyed, and there's no information on the 4th. So, again, when Russia dropped this tank on us, I'm going to assume a bunch of stodgy old white British officers raised their heavily lidded eyebrows and went, oh dear, those Ruskies are at it again. So UK DoD decided it was time to tally-ho and update the Challenger to meet the threats that were coming. So let's get into the rather bland meat and boiled potatoes of this beast. So looking from the ground up, we're going to notice several new things here. They kept the Challenger chassis. Completely expected. It makes more sense just to upgrade the turret when you can also add newer, smaller components to the chassis. So they've upgraded the engine from the Perkins CV126A to the 9A, giving it an increase in power from 830 kilowatts at 1200 RPM to around 1119 kilowatts at 1500 RPM. Now, this increase in electrical power is going to be what is necessary to power the digital network integration of the turret systems, which are all going into these new Challenger 3 upgrades. The transmission itself is going to be the same as the Challenger 2, but with certain metallurgical upgrades to increase durability and longevity over the course and modernization of the Leopard chassis. I spent so much time talking about German tanks. The Challenger chassis. So it's going to keep it around just a little bit longer so they don't have to produce more older parts for the older transmissions. They can just keep producing these newer transmissions that are the same as the old ones, but with newer, better components. Now, the hydrogas suspension system, well, finicky and complicated, especially to repair. They are far superior overall to the ride and handling compared to torsion bar suspension found on most NATO tanks, or the combination suspension where it's a mix of a hydropneumatic spring with a torsion bar. Now, this is going to decrease the wear and tear on the gun system overall by increasing the smoothness of the ride. It's not going to be so as jarring as the torsion bar suspension, which is nice. Now, moving up is where we find most of our changes at the turret. And this project is mostly, of all things, a turret modernization, which brings this into NATO standard. And it's about goddamn time that the Queen and her boys decided to step boldly into the 21st century and join the rest of us proper. So, the first thing that stands out with the Challenger 3 turret is the fact that, again, they're finally adopting the NATO standard. They're switching from the 120mm rifled L30A1 barrel to the L55A1 barrel, which is the slightly longer version of the L44, which is the standard on most NATO tanks and accepts the 1 and 2 part 120mm ammunition. Now, this is coming on the cusp of NATO looking to upgrade to a larger tank cannon round. Again, caliber of these ammunition types are kind of currently at their peak because of chemistry, material science. The velocity and ranges can't really get much better outside of learning how to make 120 millimeter missiles and fire them out the tank barrels without ruining them. And with near-peer adversaries adopting larger and longer ranged rounds and calibers, it seems like NATO's going to do the same, and it almost seems like a step backwards that future tanks are going to be already with, again, a larger tank round, and the Challenger 3, whose turret has already been said by Rheinmetall and BAE Systems, who are in charge of the upgrade package, that it isn't capable of accepting of a 130 millimeter barrel, that you need a whole new larger turret to put this in. So again, it seems like a step backwards and not really too forward thinking, especially on the cusp of a possible change again in NATO caliber. So this will probably knock the new Challenger 3 quickly down the firepower and usability index. Now the commander has an independently operated 100 killer parry sight, which is utilizing third generation day-night LLAMP systems, which has a stated identification range of 3,000 meters and a positive identification range of 2,600 meters. In comparison to the T-14 specs, I'd say this is a little bit more realistic and more in line with the Leopard 2A5 or Leopard 2A5 or Leopard 2A6 and an M1A2 SEP V3 system. You know, it's good to catch up, but it's not exactly groundbreaking or going to be anything to write home about. Okay. We also have an integrated laser detector and countermeasure system using Rheinmetall's ROSI, or Rapid Obscurance System, and the Trophy ADS, which is really the only asset that this tank has got that's a little bit more newer. The Trophy ADS has a ludicrously high success rate against even multiple attack vectors simultaneously, and its only real limitation and downside is the dispenser configuration, whether it's got 2 or more dispensers, each containing 6 charges. Impressive, yes, but not anything to write home about again either. All bangers and no mash, as it were. So, my final points and impressions overall that this might be an acceptable stopgap measure to bring the Challengers up to NATO standard again in contemporary terms, but that's essentially striving for mediocrity when every other tank producing NATO power again is looking to conduct tests for new tanks that are severely outgunned, severely up-armored, and with dedicated top attack protection system, which, aside from bolting on heavy add-ons like the Challenger 3 is currently attempting to do, or even with the M1A2 SEP V3's Tusk, which all those extra add-ons, it already adds extra weight to an already overtaxed suspension system and power plant. Now again, with the upgraded power plant this thing's getting, it might take a lot of that stress off, but you know, again, striving for mediocrity when everyone else is looking to the future, they're looking to the now. Now, on the flip side, let's say whether or not NATO tanks can wipe the floor with Russian tanks or even to the other extent Chinese tanks. Yes, absolutely 100%. The problem is where tanks in their secondary role, which is to support infantry with heavy firepower in urban operations. Not exactly the role it was designed for, but it's one it gets nonetheless, quite often. Myself having been on that end of it. Now you only have to watch any military channel in the last 6 months to see how that goes without a dedicated anti-top attack protection system installed on your vehicle. You wind up with all that crap like the cope cages and everything else, and it just doesn't work. Yeah, it's a nice feel-good, all fuzzy measure, but boy oh boy does it not really work at all. So that's going to quickly delegate even the Challenger 3 to second-line service and at best maybe an expendable attack unit, because it'd be far better, far superior tanks online with it at the same time that are far better at what they're going to need to be able to do. And again, Rheinmetall and BAE have both stated that the new tank won't be able to accept the larger gun that may be going on NATO tanks. They'll need a whole new turret entirely, and at that point they might as well just design a whole new battle tank, or just maybe buy a bunch of KF-51 Panthers, because, well, we all know how I feel about that tank. Ultimately, this tank shows very little in the way of promise and is the procurement version of literally searching the world over for spices and not using any of them. They've gone all around the world looking for the best technology and ignored it all and just thrown on what everyone's already currently using and hope that's going to be good for the next 10 to 15 years. So I think I'm going to rate this tank 5 fish and chips out of 11 Queen Elizabeths. It's going to be obsolete before it even, finishes being produced, and that's just going to be kind of embarrassing. Like, I guess really, realistically, maybe Britain should just stick to air and naval power? Anyway, that's just my opinion. That's just this tanker's view. I'm Zero Option. If you like what I've said here, leave a thumbs up and a note in the comments down below. I literally try to answer every comment, although if I ever wind up with like a ton of subs, that might be difficult. But I'm not in any danger of that anytime soon, so again, leave a comment down below. Tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, tell me I'm right the hell out to lunch. And with that, guys, I will see you on the next battlefield. Peace.